You can feel it, right? The vibe has changed for a long time. There was this protective bubble around Montecito, like a force field made of PR spin high-powered lawyers, and the public being scared to ask tough questions without getting labelled mean or racist. But that bubble, it's not just cracking. Anymore, it's straight up popping. If you've been following the royal saga, you already know the name Tom Bower. He's the guy who wrote Revenge. And when that book dropped, everyone treated it like the final word, the nuclear option case closed. That's what people thought. But here's the thing, I've been digging into what's happening behind the scenes, and the chatter I'm hearing tells a very different story. Turns out Revenge wasn't the main event at all. It was just the warm-up the prologue Bower's been making the rounds lately. Dropping little hints that are honestly making people nervous. He's basically saying the first book was the safe version, the version that could get past the libel lawyers in London. The version that had to leave out the really damaging stuff because witnesses were too scared to go on the record. Or NDAs were still locked tight. In other words, what we've heard so far might be nothing compared to what's still sitting in the shadows. But here's where it gets wild. Things have changed. We're now hearing reports that Tom Bower is getting ready to drop the rest of the file. The uncut version, and this time he's not dealing with a duchess at the peak of her power, he's dealing with a brand that, let's be real, is circling the drain. And we need to talk about what's supposedly in these missing chapters. We're talking about the DL rumours that have been whispered about on forums for years, but never printed. We're talking about the missing years in Soho House. We're talking about people who were paid to disappear, so grab a drink and settle in. Because today, we're not just talking about a book release. We're talking about the potential dismantling of the most carefully curated image in Hollywood history now. Let's set the context, because you have to understand why a second book is dangerous in a way the first one never was. When Revenge was written, Meghan was still swinging big. She had the Spotify deal. She had Netflix. She was firing off lawsuits like they were press releases. People were scared of her. If you were a former staffer or an old friend from her acting days, you kept your mouth shut. Why risk it? And Tom Bower, he's a veteran. He knows exactly how UK libel laws work. And trust me, they are brutal for writers in the UK. The burden of proof is on the author. If Bower wrote something in Revenge that he couldn't prove 100% in a court of law, the publisher would cut it whole chapters. Were reportedly shredded, not because they were lies, but because they were legally risky. Bower has basically admitted this himself. He's said in interviews that he had to leave the really good stuff on the cutting room floor. But here's the twist. The fear is gone now. I'm seeing a massive shift in how people in the industry talk about the Sussexes. 2 years ago, if you brought them up in a meeting, the room would go awkward. Now people just roll their eyes. The fear factor has evaporated. And when the fear goes, the silence goes with it. Because let's be real, NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, are only as strong as the person enforcing them, and a lot of them come with time limits. We're now hitting the 5-year mark since Megxit. That means a ton of those early contracts are expiring. And the people who signed them? They're not loyal anymore. In fact, a lot of them are angry. Bower knows this. He's not writing a simple biography this time. He's building a dossier. He's reportedly going back to the same sources who were too scared to talk in 2022 and saying, okay, how about now? And the answer he's getting back is, yeah, let's talk. The rumour now is that Bower isn't tiptoeing anymore. He's walking in with steel-toed boots. He's digging into the bullying report the palace buried. He's re-examining the inconsistencies in the suicidal narrative. He's pulling apart everything that didn't make the first cut. And let's stay on that bullying report for a second, because this is the real smoking gun the palace has been sitting on. Remember when the story broke about Meghan allegedly bullying staff? The emails from Jason Knorf, the PR secretary, claiming she was driving 2 PAs out of the household and crushing the confidence of a third that was explosive. The palace launched an investigation. They paid an outside firm to interview everyone. And then nothing. They buried the report, called it internal HR matters, and refused to release the findings. At the time, people thought the palace was just protecting itself. But looking back, it feels more like they were protecting Meghan, or at least trying to keep the peace to avoid a full-blown war with California. But Bower doesn't care about keeping the peace. Insiders are saying this new book is going to blow the lid off that whole investigation. And we're not just talking about a few difficult emails sent at 5 a.m. We're talking about alleged behaviour some staff described as psychodrama. screaming matches, people reduced to tears at their desks, a toxic workplace vibe that in any normal company would get you fired on the spot. The image Meghan has sold the feminist. The compassionate leader cannot survive if these stories come out in detail. You can't preach kindness on a podcast and then be exposed for humiliating junior staffers because the wrong shade of blankets showed up. It doesn't work. And here's the real kicker: the staff want to talk they've watched Meghan go on Oprah, go on Netflix, and paint herself as the victim of a cold, unfeeling institution. Meanwhile, they're sitting there thinking, I was the one crying in the bathroom, not you. If Bauer gives these people a voice, the victim card is done. You can't be the victim if you were the bully. Okay, now let's pivot to something darker. Something that's always felt like a missing puzzle piece, the lost years before Harry, before the peak of Suits fame. Meghan was hustling. And I don't even mean that in a bad way. Every actor hustles, but there's a very specific chapter of her life that seems to have been quietly scrubbed from the internet, and that's where things start getting really interesting. I'm talking about the Soho House era. If you don't know what Soho House is, it's a members-only club, super exclusive, super private, no photos allowed. It's basically where the elite go to misbehave without getting caught. And right at the centre of Meghan's world during this time was a man named Marcus Anderson. He's a fascinating character. He's basically the fixer for Soho House. He knows everyone. He connects people, and for years, he was practically Meghan's shadow. He was there when she met Harry. He was there at the wedding. He's arguably one of the most important men in her life, yet you almost never hear his name in the mainstream press. Why? Well, Bauer is reportedly digging into this relationship with surgical precision, and the questions he's asking are uncomfortable. How was a cable TV actress who wasn't exactly an A-lister, living a jet-set lifestyle that clearly went way beyond her paycheck? Who was paying for all that travel? Who was making those introductions? There are rumours. And yes, they're just rumours, until Bauer prints receipts that Meghan's role in this social circle was a lot more complicated than people think. We've all heard the whispers about yachting, and online that term has taken on a life of its own. It's often used to shame people or spin wild conspiracy theories. But if you strip away the nasty comments, there's still a real question underneath. Was Meghan moving through high society circles as a kind of social lubricant? Was she there to meet wealthy men? Was her rise orchestrated by Marcus Anderson? Bauer is obsessed with the money. He's obsessed with the connections. He's lining up the timeline of when she met Harry and asking the big question: was this a fairy tale? Or was it a setup? Did she just randomly bump into a prince? Or was she placed in his path by people who knew exactly what kind of woman Harry, damaged, needy, looking for a saviour, would fall for? Because if Bauer can prove that this romance was actually a targeted acquisition, the entire love story collapses. And let's be honest, that love story is the only product they have left to sell. All right, we have to go there. Now this is the big one. The third rail of royal, reporting the pregnancies for years. If you even whispered the word surrogacy in relation to Archie or Lilibet, you were labelled a lunatic. The press wouldn't touch it. The palace wouldn't touch it. It was treated like radioactive waste, but the internet never forgets. And the internet noticed things. They noticed everything: the changing size of the bump, the squatting in heels, the way she moved. They noticed there were no doctors signing off on the birth announcements, which is standard royal protocol and was suddenly skipped. They noticed that no doctor has ever gone on record to say, yes, I delivered the baby, and now we have a name. Deal. This is the rumour that's keeping PR teams up at night. There's a story circulating that a woman referred to as Deal has come forward claiming she was the surrogate, and she's not just telling stories. She's allegedly saying she has paperwork. According to these leaks, DL is describing a highly coordinated operation, clinic visits under fake names, NDAs signed in triplicate payments routed through offshore entities to keep the paper trail invisible. It sounds like a spy novel, right? But here's why this is sticky. Meghan's obsession with secrecy. When Archie was born, the secrecy was borderline pathological. They refused to say where he was born. They refused to show the birth certificate for weeks. And when they finally did, it had been edited. The doctors weren't named. The whole thing was weird. If Bauer goes down this road, it's game over. And I don't say that lightly if it turns out the children were born via surrogate and the public was misled. And more importantly, the line of succession was messed with. That's a constitutional crisis. Royal rules are archaic, but they're strict. A child in the line of succession has to be born of the body. If a surrogate was used, Those kids might not technically be eligible for their titles. Now imagine the fallout. Meghan has built her entire current identity around motherhood the mama, branding the merch the image if it comes out that she faked a pregnancy for the cameras, if she wore a prosthetic bump, while soaking up applause for being a pregnant icon. The public can forgive a lot. They can forgive greed. They can forgive rudeness. They cannot forgive being lied to on a biological level that hits different. It's visceral. And here's the part people keep missing. Tom Bower is a forensic biographer. He doesn't print random rumours, he prints what he can defend in court. If he includes the DL story or even strongly hints at it, it means he's seen something that convinced him he's not about to torch his entire career over a message board conspiracy. So if this actually makes it into the book, buckle up. But let's step back from the specific scandals for a second and look at the psychology. Because this is where Bower really shines. He's not just about the what, he's about the why. The tragedy of Meghan Markle, if you even want to call it that, is that she tried to play a role she didn't fully understand. She wanted to be Diana 2.0. She looked at the Princess of Wales and saw the adulation. The magazine covers the global influence, the power. But she missed the most important part. The suffering Diana wasn't beloved just because she was stylish, though she was. She was beloved because she was vulnerable. She bled in public. Her pain was real. She didn't curate it, she lived it. She survived it. Meghan tried to reverse engineer that. She tried to brand suffering. And Bower points this out brilliantly. He talks about the split from reality the moment Meghan started believing her own hype. She thought she could script her life like an episode of Suits. Scene 1, the victim. Scene 2, the triumph. Scene 3, the global applause. But real life doesn't work like that. After the Australia tour, something snapped. She started seeing herself as a revolutionary. But a revolution needs a cause, and her only cause was herself. Bower's sources describe a woman obsessed with her own press, checking Google alerts at 2 a.m, screaming at staff if a headline wasn't flattering enough. It wasn't about service. It was about image control. And this is exactly why the Diana cosplay failed. Because you can wear the perfume, you can wear the watch, you can copy the outfits. But the public has a really good radar for authenticity. We know when someone is genuinely hurting. And we know when someone is checking their lighting before squeezing out a tear. Bower is expected to go deep into the psychological unravelling. The paranoia, the feeling that the whole world was against her, when in reality, the world was just bored of her. And that brings us to where things are right now, the current state of affairs, which I'm almost certain the book will cover as the aftermath. The Sussex brand is in freefall. Remember that billion-dollar brand? Remember when the experts said they'd be the richest couple in Hollywood? Where is it now? Spotify fired them and straight up called them grifters. The Netflix deal is hanging by a thread. The Archetypes podcast flopped. The 40x40 initiative is gone. The children's book ended up in the bargain bin. Hollywood has frozen them out. And this is exactly what Bower gets better than anyone. Hollywood is a transactional town. They don't care if you're royal. They care if you make money. Meghan and Harry, they're bad for business. They bring drama. They bring security headaches, and they don't deliver the numbers. The A-listers, the Clooneys, the Obamas, the Beyonces have all quietly stepped back. They see the toxicity. They see how Meghan and Harry treated their own families. And they think, if they did that to the Queen of England, what will they do to me if a deal goes south? Bower's new book is reportedly going to document all of this. The freeze-out, the unreturned phone calls, the desperate attempts to score, invites to the Met Gala or the Oscars only to be snubbed. It's humiliating, and for someone like Meghan who thrives on validation, this is worse than being hated. It's being irrelevant. The victim act has expired. You can't sit in a Montecito mansion and be the victim forever. Eventually, people stop feeling sorry for you and start asking, why are you the common denominator in every single conflict in your life? Before we wrap up, there's one more thing we need to dive into. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but stick with me. You mentioned Andrew Lowy. He's another heavyweight biographer, currently working on a book about Prince Andrew now. Why does that matter for Meghan? Because these circles overlap. We know Prince Andrew was, let's say, entangled in the world of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. That world was full of social fixers. Wealthy networks and young women trying to climb there have been persistent rumours. And Lowy is apparently digging into them about connections between the Soho House crowd And the York family, Eugenie and Beatrice remember Eugenie, is the one royal Meghan actually knew before Harry. They go way back if Loie and Bauer are comparing notes. We could be looking at a bridge between these two scandals. Was Marcus Anderson connected to that darker social scene did Meghan cross paths with Andrew during her yachting days? I'm not saying she was involved in Epstein's crimes, let's be very clear about that. But if she was in the same rooms on the same boats, it paints a picture of a woman swimming in very murky waters, long before she put on a tiara. And the palace knew this. It's one of the reasons they were so nervous about her. They knew she had a past. They knew she had skeletons, not just from bad breakups, but from questionable associations. If Bauer pulls this thread, he's not just exposing Meghan. He's shining a light on the dirty underbelly of the entire social elite that she so desperately wanted to join. So what happens when this book finally drops? Meghan will lawyer up. She always does. There will be cease and desist letters. Friends will be quietly leaking denials to People magazine. There will probably even be a tearful interview where she claims Bauer is obsessed with her. But honestly, I don't think it's going to work this time. The audience has moved on, the credibility is gone. And let's be real, the money is running out. Tom Bauer is 77 years old, he's rich, he's successful. He doesn't care about getting sued. In fact, he'd probably welcome it. A lawsuit means discovery. It means putting Meghan on the stand. It means forcing her to tell the truth under oath. And that's the one thing she absolutely cannot do. This book isn't just another biography, it's a reckoning, it's the receipts for a decade of gaslighting. If revenge was the warning shot, this is the full artillery. NDAs are dead. Loyalty is gone, and the truth, it's finally coming for Meghan Markle. So, let me know in the comments, do you think the deal rumour is real? Can she survive another book? Or is this the end of the road for the Sussex brand? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Because trust me, the second this book leaks, we're going page by page. You will not want to miss it. This is Star Spotlight. Stay tuned.